What if I told you that the tranquilizer gun, a tool we associate with modern wildlife conservation, has a forgotten origin story? A story that begins not in a lab, but in the wilds of Africa, with a man named Captain Barnett Harris and his invention, the Mercy Bullet. Today we dive into the untold history of how pain, science, and showmanship collided in the early 20th century to change the way we capture wild animals forever. It's 1928, and Captain Barnett Harris, an amateur naturalist from Indiana, arrives in Zululand, South Africa. His mission? To test his groundbreaking invention, the Mercy Bullet. This wasn't your ordinary bullet. Instead of killing, it was designed to render animals unconscious, allowing them to be captured alive and unharmed. But Harris wasn't just a scientist. He was a showman, a man who knew how to capture the public's imagination. His invention promised to revolutionize the brutal practice of animal capture. But did it live up to the hype? Before we dive into Harris's story, let's take a moment to credit the research that brought this forgotten history to light. This video is based on the work of Mia Uys from the University of Cape Town, whose article, On the Trail of the Mercy Bullet, uncovers the fascinating intersection of science, ethics, and showmanship in the early days of animal tranquilizers. To understand why Harris's invention was so revolutionary, we need to look back at the brutal methods of animal capture in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Back then, capturing wild animals for zoos or research often meant killing the adults to secure the young. It was a bloody, destructive process that drew criticism from conservationists and animal lovers alike. Enter Harris, who saw an opportunity to change the game. His Mercy Bullet was essentially a hypodermic needle filled with anesthetic drugs designed to be fired from a gun. When it struck an animal, the drugs would render it unconscious, allowing for a humane capture. But here's the twist. Harris wasn't a trained scientist. He was an amateur, a self-taught inventor who relied on showmanship to promote his creation. And while the press hailed him as a hero, the scientific community was skeptical. In 1928, Harris traveled to Zululand to test his Mercy Bullet on wild animals. His most famous experiment involved a black rhinoceros. Using his bullet, Harris successfully tranquilized the mother rhino and captured her baby. But the story doesn't have a happy ending. The baby rhino died in transit, and when Harris returned to the scene, the mother, now awake, charged at him, tossing him into the bush. The Mercy Bullet had only a temporary effect, and Harris's experiments were cut short. But why did Harris leave Zululand so abruptly? The answer lies in the mismanagement of the region's wildlife. At the time, Zululand was grappling with a disease called Nagana, spread by the tsetse fly. To combat the disease, the government ordered the mass slaughter of wild animals. Harris, disgusted by the destruction, abandoned his experiments and left South Africa. But was the game slaughter the real reason for his departure, or was it the questionable efficacy of his invention? Despite the setbacks, Harris didn't give up. Upon returning to the United States, he continued to promote his Mercy Bullet through lectures, radio shows, and public demonstrations. In 1930, he even demonstrated his invention at the New York Livestock Exchange, where he successfully tranquilized a sheep. But when called upon to solve a deer overpopulation problem in Michigan, the Mercy Bullet failed miserably, killing 2 deer and only temporarily stunning a third. So what happened to Harris and his invention? Over time, he faded into obscurity, overshadowed by more successful developments in animal tranquilizers. It wasn't until the 1950s and 60s that the modern tranquilizer gun, as we know it, was perfected by Colin Murdoch and Dr. Anthony Harthorne. Their work, built on effective drugs like atropine, revolutionized wildlife conservation and made Harris's Mercy Bullet a footnote in history. The story of the Mercy Bullet is more than just a tale of a failed invention. It's a reminder of how science, ethics, and showmanship intersect in unexpected ways. Harris may not have succeeded in creating a foolproof tranquilizer, but his work paved the way for future innovations. And while his name may have been forgotten, his legacy lives on in the tools we use today to protect and conserve wildlife. So the next time you hear about a tranquilizer gun, remember Captain Barnett Harris and his mercy bullet, because sometimes the most important stories are the ones that history almost forgot. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more deep dives into the fascinating intersections of history, science, and culture. See you next time.